just one specific panel under the table, because she'd noticed something on her second visit. A detail small enough to miss in a room full of distractions, but it stuck with her. Each chair leg left a dust outline on the floor. Clean, precise, except one. The fifth place setting. There was no outline, because the fifth chair had never been there until the day of the birthday. The camera crew, 2 film school graduates from Eugene, began setting up lights in the living room. Lena crouched in the dining room alone, gloves on, flashlight beam sweeping low. She tapped the floorboards. Solid, solid, hollow. She tapped again. Same hollow echo. About 3 feet wide. She slid the table aside. Dust bloomed upward. The cake plate, long since petrified, trembled and clinked against the centerpiece as she moved it. And there, just as she suspected, was a knothole in the floor, smoothed around the edge like it had been used often. She reached for her pocket knife. The board came up easily. It had been pried up before, many times, maybe. Beneath it was a shallow recess, not a crawl space, more like a cubby. Inside, 3 things. A faded paper party hat with BEN written in red marker, a child's sock, striped, no larger than a toddler's, and a Polaroid photograph, stuck to the floor, its edges curled. Lena picked it up carefully. The photo showed the Nolan family, all 4 of them, seated at the birthday table. But someone else was there too, a 5th figure, faint, just behind Marie's chair. A man, tall and thin, out of focus, too far back to be part of the family, too close not to be in the house. She turned the photo over, written in a child's handwriting, "For when he wants to see us smile." Lena's stomach turned. She sat back on her heels and looked around the room again, this time with new eyes. The party decor hadn't been placed for a typical child's birthday. It had been staged. There were no presents visible in the police photos. No used wrapping paper, no torn boxes, only 4 paper plates, a cake with exactly 6 candles, and 5 labeled placemats. Robert Marie Hallie Ben, the guest. Who was the guest? Later that afternoon, she visited Linden Falls Elementary School. The building had been renovated, but the office still kept old yearbooks in the archives. She pulled the one from 1988. Page after page of smiling children stared back at her, some with missing teeth, some awkward in that way only 5th graders can be. She found Hallie's class. There she was, 2nd row, 4th from the left. Hair in braids, small smile, large front teeth. But it was the class list that froze her. Beneath Hallie's name was a scratched-out line. 1 student removed. She traced it with her finger. The ink had bled through. The erased name had been Thomas, no last name listed, no photo, no bio. Just a space that once held a name. Lena tracked down a former teacher, Ms. Sharp, now 82 and living in a care facility on the edge of town. The woman still had sharp eyes and a sharper memory. "Thomas," she repeated, squinting at the class list. "Yes, the quiet boy." "Quiet how?" "Didn't speak. Not once, the entire year. Had these huge eyes, pale hands, drew strange pictures." Hallie sat next to him. "Do you remember his last name?" The woman shook her head. "I don't think he had one. Some kind of foster placement, I believe. Temporary. He didn't come back after spring." "Did he say anything to anyone?" The old woman hesitated. "One time, I caught him whispering in the coat room. Thought he was talking to himself, but he said, 'They'll be ready soon, just a few more recordings.'" That night, Lena reviewed the Polaroid again. Zoomed in on the figure near Marie's chair. The shape wasn't quite human. Its limbs were too long, its fingers extended into a blur, and where the face should have been, only a dark, smudged void. She stared at it for a long time, then reached for her mic. Podcast recording, April 16th, 2024. Some houses remember. The Nolan house doesn't creak or moan. It breathes, and in its breath, you can still hear them. The family, the child who whispered, and the guest who was never invited, only fed. April 17th, 2024. Location: Linden Falls, Oregon. Second chances. Thrift. The journal turned up in a box of old linens. Lena hadn't expected to find anything. She'd only stopped at Second Chances Thrift because she needed a coat. Hers was soaked from a sudden storm while leaving the Nolan house. The building smelled of wet carpet and lemon cleaner, with racks of old VHS tapes and shelves of discarded toys staring blankly at the walls. She was halfway through a bin of Afghans when she found it, a small red spiral notebook, its cover frayed and curling. No label, no stickers, just a name inside the front page, written in careful print. Property of Hallie Nolan. If found, don't tell Dad. Lena's fingers went cold. She flipped the pages carefully. Most of the entries were short, some only a sentence or two. Childish spelling, simple thoughts, but laced with something Lena couldn't shake. A fear beneath the words. March 3rd. He's back in the vent again. I told Mom, but she said it's mice. It's not mice. March 15th. Ben keeps giggling at the closet. Says he hears his voice. I told him not to talk to it. April 2nd. I found the wires in the teddy bear. He's listening through them. I buried it in the backyard. I hope that's okay. Lena sat down on the floor of the store, right there between a rack of Easter decorations and an end table with 3 legs. She kept reading. May 6th. We had a party, but it wasn't my birthday. I had to wear the yellow dress. Ben wore the purple one. He said Thomas picked them. I don't like the pictures. They make our smiles too big. May 22nd. I saw him. Not in the vent. In my room, watching me sleep. His eyes were like mirrors, but not shiny. More like holes. June 14th. Dad said we should stop recording, but Mom said he won't let us. I pretended to sleep, but I heard them arguing in the kitchen. Then I heard the click. I think he recorded that too. The journal ended abruptly. No goodbye, no final thought. Just one torn page, half ripped, half burned. The remaining scrap read, I think we're the show. Lena brought the journal to her car in a sealed evidence bag. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove to the Nolan house, parked in front, engine idling, and stared at the front window. Curtains still closed, the outline of the answering machine barely visible through the dusty glass. She thought about the wires in the teddy bear, the tape recorder in Hallie's hands, the radio wall at the Langford house, the vent. Something had wired itself through that family. Listened, recorded, watched. Lena replayed the cassette from the library again, this time on headphones in her car, doors locked. She listened to the looping distortion buried under Hallie's voice. This time, she wasn't just hearing whispers, she was hearing clicks, rhythmic, measured, a pattern, like recording devices, turning on and off, on and off. She opened her notes app and began logging timestamps. 38 total, 38 activations, in a loop no more than 2 minutes long. The house wasn't just haunted, it was wired. For surveillance, for conditioning. She stared at the Nolan house for a long time. Then she said aloud, softly, "What were you preparing them for?" She drove back to the motel and uploaded the next episode of her podcast, Dead Air with Lena Reed. Episode 4, Through the Vents. This isn't just a disappearance. This is a blueprint. Wires in toys, cameras in closets, voices in the walls. Hallie Nolan kept a journal, and in it, she mapped the inside of the house, like she knew someone else was reading it too. Her last entry didn't say goodbye. It said something worse. I think we're the show. April 18th, 2024. Location, Nolan House. Basement utility panel. Lena didn't tell anyone she was going back in alone. Not the Historical Society. Not the Podcaster Forum. Not even the crew. It was just past midnight when she parked on Willow Drive again. The neighborhood was asleep. Lights out across all the houses, except for one porch bulb flickering at the corner. She slipped through the back fence and entered the Nolan house through the rear door, the lock already broken from her earlier visit. The silence was different at night. Thicker, deader, like the house was holding its breath. The basement door was still bolted shut. She unhooked the latch and pushed. It groaned open. The air that met her was cold and sharp, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. Dust spiraled in the beam of her headlamp as she descended the narrow wooden stairs. The smell of mildew and rust got stronger with every step. The Nolan basement had never been properly searched, not in 1988, and not since. The official report listed it as non-entry due to flood hazard and electrical risk. But Lena had studied the blueprints. There was a utility panel on the west wall, one that hadn't been opened in decades. That was where she was headed. The crawl space wasn't obvious at first. Behind the water heater, a wall of old insulation sagged, but the shape behind it was wrong. Rectangular, recessed. She pushed the insulation aside. Beneath it, a panel of sheet metal bolted at the corners. She unscrewed it slowly. The panel dropped forward with a clang, revealing a narrow square tunnel, no more than 3 feet tall and 5 feet deep. Inside, dust, cobwebs, and something black and rectangular in the far corner. Lena reached in with gloved hands and pulled it out. It was a cassette recorder, an old one. Its surface was scratched and sticky. A strip of tape marked the top. HN, private, do not play, Hallie Nolan. Lena stared at it. Then she pressed play. The tape crackled. And then came Hallie's voice, whispering close to the mic. If you're hearing this, I guess you found it. I hid it here because I don't think Mom and Dad remember anymore, and Ben's acting weird. A pause. He talks to it now, not out loud, in his sleep. I think it lives in the crawl space near my room, but sometimes I hear it behind the vent. It hums. It makes Dad turn off the lights and talk slow, like he's not Dad anymore. Another pause. If it makes me go quiet too, just remember we didn't do anything wrong. We were just here. Click. Static. A voice overlays hers. Not a child's. Not human. You're still listening. Good. Lena stopped the tape. The voice, the second one, didn't match anything she'd ever heard. It wasn't just distorted. It sounded assembled, like someone had stitched syllables together from other voices. Too clean, too artificial, like an imitation of speech. And worse, it had spoken directly to her. You're still listening. She recorded the entire crawl space, every inch. Found nothing else but brittle wiring, old batteries, and another teddy bear, gutted and wired with a receiver. Same model Hallie had mentioned in the journal. She bagged everything, sealed the crawl space again, and climbed out. But as she turned to leave, her headlamp caught something behind her, on the concrete wall, scratched into the paint, barely visible. They watched from the vents. And below that, in smaller childlike writing, don't let him wear your face too. Lena stood in the center of the basement, heart hammering. The house had never been just a house. It had been a shell, a test site, maybe even a stage. Everything had been controlled, from the placement of birthday candles to the number of chairs to the people in the house themselves. And someone, or something, had been behind the walls. Podcast recording, April 18th, 2024. Tonight I found a crawl space. Inside, a tape. On that tape, the voice of a 10-year-old girl begging to be remembered, and a second voice that doesn't belong in this world. I think someone was testing them, not just watching, programming, and I think Hallie knew. April 19th, 2024. Location, Linden Falls Police Substation. Lena didn't knock this time. She walked into the substation and asked to speak with retired officer Daniel Cordell. The front desk tried to stall her, asked for a scheduled appointment. But Lena didn't budge. "I'm not a reporter," she said. "I'm not trying to ruin his pension or reopen the case. I just need to know why he lied." That got their attention. 10 minutes later, she was sitting across from Cordell in the same back room as before. Only now, his arms were crossed, his eyes hard. "Where'd you go?" he asked flatly. "I went back to the Nolan basement." Cordell's jaw flexed. "You shouldn't have done that." "But I did," Lena replied. "And I found a crawl space with a tape recorder, one Hallie hid. It had her voice on it, and something else." Cordell said nothing. "I also found teddy bears with transmitters, vents full of old wires, and a journal full of warnings no 10-year-old should ever write." Still, he stayed silent. She leaned forward. "Why didn't you mention the crawl space in 1988? Cordell's hands tensed on the table. "Because I was told not to." "By who?" "The mayor?" He shook his head. "Worse, someone from the state. No badge, no department, just a folder full of photographs and a list of what not to document." Lena stared. "Photographs of what?" Cordell hesitated, then said quietly, "The vents." He rubbed a hand over his face and leaned back. About 3 weeks after the Nolans disappeared, a box showed up at the station. No return address. Inside were Polaroids, pictures from inside the house, inside the children's bedrooms, inside the basement, photos taken from behind the vents. Lena felt cold crawl over her spine, like someone had placed cameras behind the walls. Cordell nodded. "But no wires were ever found, at least not by our team. The photos were clear, close up, framed like surveillance stills." "What happened to the photos?" "They were confiscated within an hour." "By who?" He shook his head again. "They didn't say. They had clearance. One of them mentioned something called Project Sycamore. That's all I ever heard." Lena jotted the phrase down. "Project Sycamore," Cordell continued. "After they left, the case was downgraded. We were told to list it as a no-foul-play suspected disappearance. Said the family probably fled due to financial pressures or private reasons. But that's not what you believed." "No," he said softly. "Not even close." "So you stayed quiet." "I tried to tell the truth in pieces, but every time I mentioned the crawl space, the vents, or that fifth place setting on the birthday table, I got pushed further out." "And Langford?" He exhaled hard. "I think Langford knew something. I think he was listening to the same signals they were. Maybe even interfering." "Interfering how?" "I don't know. But his radios were picking up things they shouldn't have. After he vanished, his equipment was seized by the same unmarked team." Lena blinked. "They took the radios?" "Everything. House was empty the next morning. Wires ripped out of the walls. Equipment gone. Even the floorboards were pulled." Lena pulled out her phone and played a short audio clip, the most recent one from the crawlspace tape. The synthesized voice that followed Hallie's whisper. When it ended, Cordell didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "That voice isn't new." Lena looked up. "What?" Cordell nodded slowly. "I heard it once, back in '89. Came over the dispatch radio late one night. No call sign, no ID, just a burst of static and a voice that said, 'Channel active, observation resumed.' Then it cut off." He looked Lena in the eye. "You think this is a haunting or surveillance, but I think it's something older. I think they were rehearsing." "Rehearsing for what?" Cordell gave her a bleak smile. "I don't know, but it didn't start with the Nolans, and it sure as hell didn't end there." That night, Lena sat in her motel room with the lights off, headphones on. She played the full crawlspace tape. No skipping, no edits. At minute 12, the tape reversed. Literally reversed. Backward speech. She isolated the channel. Ran it through a spectrogram. What appeared wasn't just audio, it was visual. A waveform image that slowly formed a face. Not a human face. Elongated jaw, no eyes, teeth too many and too straight. Beneath it, a single phrase encoded in the spectral data. Recording successful. Ready for next house. Podcast recording. April 19th, 2024. He lied. Officer Cordell knew the Nolan house had been breached, not by an intruder, but by something else. Something that watched through vents, listened through toys, whispered through the walls, and the worst part? It wasn't just listening, it was learning. April 20th, 2024. Location: Linden Falls, Oregon. Nolan property, post-demolition site. The Nolan house was gone by morning. Lena arrived on Willow Drive to find a work crew standing over a flattened foundation, steam rising from the damp earth. A chain-link fence surrounded the lot, and a yellow sign marked the area as an environmental hazard. Do not enter. She stared through the fence in disbelief. One of the contractors glanced up from the pit and walked over. "You with the Historical Society?" "No," Lena said. "I'm with the family, sort of." The man wiped his forehead. "Then I probably shouldn't say anything." "Please," she said. "I need to know why it's gone." He looked around, then leaned closer. "We were told to demo it last night. Rush order, hazmat claim. Something about structural instability. But you want to know the weird part?" She nodded. "City never filed the request. Came from someone higher. All we got was a signature and a one-day permit." "Who signed it?" He shrugged. "Paper's gone. Team lead took it and walked off the site 2 hours ago." Lena felt it like a punch in her ribs. The crawl space, the vents, the recorders, all of it, buried now, erased. She paced the perimeter, recording everything she could. Ash piles, broken brick, blackened soil. In the center of the foundation was a single square of intact tile, from what used to be the dining room. She knelt beside it. Something had been scratched into the tile, half burned, barely visible. I never stopped recording. She pulled her phone from her pocket. No signal. Back at her motel, Lena found her inbox flooded. Subscribers had doubled overnight. The podcast was trending. An audio engineer from a New York lab had emailed her. He'd run a spectrographic analysis of the Nolan tapes she'd uploaded. There was a match. A 1987 Cold War-era broadcast intercepted by a U.S. naval submarine. Coded language, patterns of reversed speech. And at the center, the same synthetic voice Lena had heard from the crawl space. He sent her the original transcript. "This is transmission echo. Observe, adapt, erase." And a second file. A satellite image dated April 14th, 1988, showing infrared heat signatures in the Nolan home. But there was a fifth figure. Not a family member. Stationary. Inside the vent shaft. Lena sat with her head in her hands. Whatever was in that house wasn't human. It wasn't a person. It was a program. And it hadn't been isolated. She pulled up the Foster registry for 1987 to 1988. There it was again. Thomas. Placement redacted. No last name. Transferred. Transferred where? The name had no trail, no ID, no exit form. She searched again, this time nationwide. One match, a death certificate, dated March 1994. Location, Duluth, Minnesota. Autopsy listed the body as unidentifiable male, approximately 12 years old, recovered from behind a sealed HVAC duct in an abandoned children's home. The examiner's note? No fingerprints, no iris pattern. Interior organs appear synthetic. Lena pushed away from her laptop. The pieces were falling together too fast, too perfectly. What if this wasn't just a mystery? What if it was a cycle, a test run? Linden Falls wasn't haunted. It was monitored, controlled, wiped clean when the recording finished, and the next house was already waiting. Dead Air with Lena Reed. Episode 5. The file was named Observer. You heard me right. They erased the house, not because it was haunted, but because it was full of data, of footage, of voices that never belonged to anyone real. Project Sycamore, Transmission Echo, a synthetic boy named Thomas who left no DNA, and one last line burned into tile before the house was destroyed. I never stopped recording. April 21st, 2024, location, unknown storage unit, outside Eugene, Oregon. It came in an unmarked box. Lena found it waiting outside her motel room. No return address, no postage, just a taped cardboard carton soaked from the rain. Inside, a child-sized chair, pale wood, yellow painted legs, a red sticker on the back with peeling letters, property of Emerald View Elementary, room 5. The same model from the Nolan dining room, the 5th chair. She lifted it out with gloved hands and saw what had been carved beneath the seat. Deep grooves, letters made by a blade. Thomas was here first, and beneath that, smaller, now he's everywhere. Lena didn't sleep. Instead, she drove 90 miles south to Eugene, to a storage unit she hadn't opened in over a year, back when she was still just a reporter covering rural missing persons, before dead air took off. Inside the unit, her backup gear, independent power supply, battery-operated tape decks, signal monitors, her analog tools, the ones no one could trace. She hauled the chair inside, set it under a spotlight, and sat in front of it. She didn't speak. She just pressed record and waited. It started with the hum. Same frequency as the Langford radios. Then came the soft click, like an old cassette turning over. Then the static, gentle, almost rhythmic. Finally, a voice. "You're sitting where he sat." Lena flinched. The voice wasn't behind her. It was coming from the chair. She played it back. Nothing. No voice. No static. Just the low creak of her breath. She played it again. Still nothing. But when she pressed record a third time, the speaker spoke again. Made them say goodbye first. That's how we learn. We mimic. We correct. We replace. And now, you know. Lena ripped the mic off her lapel, heart pounding. She shoved the chair back into the box, sealed it with duct tape, and drove it to the nearest landfill. But halfway there, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Silence. Then, "You can't throw away the 5th chair. It's always been in the room." Click. The line went dead. She returned to her motel to find her door already open. Nothing stolen, nothing disturbed, except the answering machine on her nightstand, the one she kept from the Nolan property before the demolition. Its red light was blinking. She hit play. "Hi, Lena, it's Hallie. I'm not scared anymore. He said I can call you now. He likes your voice." Then a long, breathy pause. "Happy birthday." Dead air with Lena Reed. Episode 6. The 5th Chair. I've been followed, not by a person, not by a ghost, by a signal. It moves through vents, through wires, through children. His name is Thomas. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe that's just the first name he took. He doesn't haunt homes. He rehearses in them. And the script is always the same. Observe, adapt, replace. I found the 5th chair. And now, I don't think I'm the only one recording anymore. April 22nd, 2024. Location, Motel Room 6, Linden Falls, Oregon. The blinking light wouldn't stop, even unplugged, even without power. The answering machine on Lena's nightstand blinked once every 7 seconds, a red pulse, like a countdown. She'd smashed the cassette inside, pulled the tape from the reels, cut the wires. But when she came back from the bathroom an hour later, a new tape was in its place. No label. She didn't press play. Not at first. She spent that morning driving in circles. No destination. Every radio she turned on led to the same frequency. 84.1 FM. Dead air. Then a voice. We remember how they sound, so we can keep pretending. Would you like to say goodbye to Hallie? She slammed the dial shut and pulled the battery out. Back in the motel room, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the answering machine. The red light still blinked. She checked her laptop. The podcast files were gone. Everyone. The uploads remained online, untouched, but the originals were missing from her drive. Even the backups. Replaced with a single new file, finalepisode.wave. She clicked on it. Hello, Lena. We're going to help you remember, just like we helped them. Then the sound of her own voice. Not live, not recent. A recording of her childhood. Reading aloud from a book, something from first grade. Her breath caught in her throat. This was her. But it wasn't possible. No one had this tape. She pressed stop. Then she unplugged the machine again. And this time, she pressed play anyway. Tape starts. He was never in the house. The house was in him. You thought you were listening, but you've been speaking too. You're the transmission now. Say it. Say it. Say it. Lena screamed and threw the machine across the room. It hit the wall, cracked open. The tape rolled under the bed. She fell to her knees, gasping. Behind her, the motel TV turned on by itself. No picture, only audio. The birthday's not over yet. Then the sound of children laughing, but distorted. Wrong. Stretched like something trying to imitate joy but never having felt it. Lena fled the motel. No suitcase, no equipment. Just her recorder and her keys. She drove south for hours, across state lines, through cell dead zones, until her signal was gone and the sky turned blue-black. But no matter where she drove, the red light followed. First the dashboard, then the phone, then the small recorder she kept in the glove box, which had never blinked before, all pulsing at the same interval. 7 seconds. Dead air with Lena Reed. Final tape not uploaded. They were never watching us. They were making copies of voices, faces, families. The answering machine wasn't blinking to warn me. It was waiting. For me to press play. Don't press play. Don't. May 8th, 2024. Location, unknown archival facility. Deep storage room 14. The tape sat on a stainless steel table, labeled only Observer 14 Audio Final, Read Transmission. A technician in gloves inserted it into the playback deck. No windows, no clocks, just a concrete room full of aging media and digitization equipment. The walls were lined with filing cabinets. Overhead, a red light blinked every 7 seconds, not connected to any fixture. The technician hit play. This is Lena Reed. If you're hearing this, I didn't make it out. I don't know what they are. Programs, ghosts, something in between, but they're not done. They listen, they adapt, and when they're finished, they move on. They left the Nolan house, but they didn't leave empty. They took something, maybe someone. And now they're in the recordings. Not the ones I made, the ones they made through me. I was the host. The fifth chair was always meant for the next voice. Click. Static. Then, thank you, Lena. We're ready for the next house. The technician reached for the stop button but hesitated. Something about the voice. It sounded like his. He glanced at the mirrored surface of the playback deck. His reflection didn't blink when he did. Case file retag. Archive. Classification transmission complete project Sycamore. Branch node terminated next site integration initiated. Final note. The answering machine from the Nolan house remains in containment. Its red light continues to blink. No power source, no off switch. 7 seconds apart. Every time. The answering machine was still blinking, even after everyone was gone.